That all Argentine Malbec is sort of lumped together. That's one thing. But in reality, Argentina is one of the world's largest and most diverse grape growing regions in the world. And those different regions produce very different Malbecs. So just like understanding how the differences between an Napa and a Sonoma Cab, or a Barossa Valley and McLarendale Shiraz help you appreciate the wines, the same holds true for Argentina. Have any of y'all started getting any pushback from your buyers, like too many Argentine Malbecs, so many hit? That's happened. So hopefully, after this class, when you go to them, you say, listen, this isn't an Argentine Malbec. This is a Malbec from Salta. Let me tell you why that's special. This is a Malbec from San Pablo. Let me tell you what's different. You know, try to start teaching them that these are different categories within Argentina. When Vino Rosso, welcome. When Vino Rosso started back in 2004, our goal was always to be the Argentine wine specialist. That's why we've always been down there. And the way we thought to achieve that was to always focus on regionality. So what we always tried to do from the beginning was to separate the portfolio by regions, by terroirs, and find what we thought was the best winery, the best representation of that terroir. And we feel that we've accomplished that. We're very proud to have with us today from Agrelo Mendoza, La Madrid, from Altamira Mendoza, Manos Negras, from Capayate Salta, Camino del Inca, from La Consulta Mendoza, Alto Cedro, from Las Compuertas Mendoza, Mesana, from Rio Negro, Patagonia, Veron, and from San Pablo Mendoza, Zorro. These have become some of the most recognized and popular Argentine brands in the country, and we're thrilled to have somebody, either an owner or a winemaker or both, from all of these wineries with us here today. They just finished harvest, so they're worn out, so it's really nice of them to all come up and be here for this. What we're going to do today is I'm going to give a quick introduction to Malbec, talk a little bit about Malbec, its history, what it is, and then you'll get to spend about 10 minutes with each winery. They'll come up, introduce themselves, talk about their specific regions, what Malbec made from those regions is like, and then of course the most fun part is we get to taste the wine while they talk, so you can experience firsthand how Malbec is represented in those terroirs. Cool? All right. Before we get to the fun part though, I want to do a quick introduction of Argentine Malbec. Argentina has been doing wine since the 16th century. It was really in the mid-1800s where they started the more professional wine industry. That's when they imported French varietals, one of those being Malbec. Malbec's originally from France, from Bordeaux and Cahors, where it's called Côte. Right now it's mostly just in Cahors, and it's a minor blending grape in Bordeaux. But before phylloxera hit, one thing that's interesting, in the mid-1800s, Malbec was much a bigger deal in Bordeaux. It was the chief blending grape of Chateau Latour, for example. But by the 40s, there were over 250,000 acres of vineyards in Argentina. Half of them were Malbec. But it's important to know that in Argentina at that time, most of the wines were just generic table wines. Everything was a blend. There was no wine made as a grape. That started to change in the 70s. When people started making Malbec, 100% varietal, working to make the wine Malbec. In the late 70s and 80s, there was a huge crisis in Argentina. Per capita consumption of wine dropped from 90 liters, which was that's like 100 bottles for every man, woman, and child, to 30. And everything they did in Argentina was consumed domestically. So their market was just cut by 2/3 very quickly. As people started drinking more Coke and more beer. So by 1990, there were only 23 acres of Malbec left. People had to pull up a lot of vines. But then in the 90s, things turned around. People started started making high quality Malbec. They started focusing for the first time on the export markets. Things have been growing. The amount of Malbec in Argentina has grown to 71,000 acres, and that's over 70% of the world's production. About 20% is in France, and the other 10% the rest of the world. You can see how Argentines their exports have exploded. You know, in the 80s and 90s, there was basically nothing. By 2005, that had gone up to 625,000 12-packs. That skyrocketed in just those 6 years to over 4 million cases. Still, Argentine Malbec is still growing at about a 40% annual clip. That being said, though, it's growth on very low numbers. Malbec still represents less than 2% of the U.S. wine consumed, so there's still room to grow. But to keep growing, again, you've got to focus on the regions. You've got to start focusing on the different kinds of Argentine Malbec. Of course, the main point of this class is to show you the differences. Before we go there, quickly, what do all Argentine Malbecs share? They all share a very dry, desert-like climate. You get lots of sun. They all get about 300 days of sun a year. So maturation of the grape is not a problem. You have minimal rainfall. This is basically a desert. They all have less than 8 inches of rain a year. So they're able to control the irrigation. So too much water is not a problem, as it is in some of the parts of the world. And because of that dry desert conditions, the plants are very naturally healthy. You don't have the problems with fungus or pests just because you're in a dry desert environment. And we're proud at Vino that all of our wineries have gone the extra step and are sustainably farmed. So those things at the top there, that's what we think. I mean, I think if you could sort of shrink yourself down and ask a Malbec grape what it likes, that's what it would like. Genetically, that is how Malbec best expresses itself. It does not do good with wetness, with humidity. These things take away Malbec color and concentration, and that's why we think Malbec does best in Argentina. Another important thing that everybody in Argentina shares is thermal amplitude. That's just the difference between day and night temperature. That can change on average about 30 degrees from day to night. So during the day it might be 95 degrees, hot, grapes maturing, great. Then at night it cools down to 65, grapes relax, nice acidity is produced. So you have concentration, but you also have balance. They all share poor, well-drained soils, although the rest of the soils, parts of the soil varies dramatically. And if you had to lump all the high-quality Argentine Malbecs together, you could generically say they all have a great purple color, they have lush and concentrated fruit, and round tannins. And we sort of think that's why the American consumer likes them so much. Sort of like the concentrated fruit of a cab and the round, velvety mouthfeel of a Merlot. Now the differences, you will hear a lot about altitude in Argentina. You can see altitude varies between 200 and 2,000 meters, the highest vineyards in the world. That's important because the Argentine wineries use that altitude to get that thermal amplitude we were just talking about. They adjust, depending on what part of Argentina they are, their altitude to get that 30-degree swing. So for example, in Salta, which is the closest to the equator in Argentina, very, very hot. If you were to grow grapes at 200 meters, you'd get raisins. You have to go up 6,000 feet above sea level to get that day and night temperature to make high-quality wines. And in Patagonia, which is far away, colder, if you were to go up 2,000 meters, you get ice wine. So they adjust their altitude to get the optimal thermal amplitude. You can see the latitude of Argentine Malbecs varies from 24th to the 40th southern parallels. So Patagonian Malbec is 1,000 miles farther away from the equator than Salta Malbec. As you can imagine, within those 1,000 miles difference, there's all kinds of different ecologies, climates, microclimates, soils, all of those different things that make up terroir make different and fascinating Malbecs. Okay, before we quickly, any questions on that? About to get to the fun part. We're going to go by the wineries, alphabetical order by region. All the wines we're tasting are 100% Malbec. Of course, they all come from their specific region. And they're all between $15 and $20 retail. Okay. First up, from Agrello.